I do want to play this because we want to focus on J.D. Vance as well as the VP nominee. And one of my favorite moments in his speech last night. Let's all watch it.
Our movement is about single moms like mine who struggled with money and addiction but never gave up. And I'm proud to say that tonight my mom is here, 10 years clean and sober. I love you, Mom. And you know, Mom, I was thinking, it'll be 10 years officially in January of 2025, and if President Trump's okay with it, let's have the celebration in the White House.
So again, I think that was extremely powerful from J.D. Vance to personalize an issue like that. I mean, a lot of times people think, oh, these folks who rise to power, have had maybe a perfect life or the silver spoon, and you realize when it comes to J.D. Vance and also talking about those issues, I mean, Will, that resonates with so much of the country right now. The fact that so many have people in their families that are dealing with addiction issues, and of course the fentanyl crisis, which is killing the number one cause of death among young people in America. To bring his mom there to talk about the fact that she was 10 years sober, to make that so public remark, I think that touched probably millions and millions of Americans who, again, may not have known a lot about J.D. Vance, may have thought, he's some right-wing senator, and he really brought himself, back down to earth to resonate with people.
Well, Jordan, I think it's also important that this is one of the first people in history that is a millennial to be picked for a running mate and not by say one of, he is the very first millennial to be placed on a presidential ticket. And I think a lot of the life experience that so many people in a large voting block will be touched by is the fact that he tied all of the mistakes of the Washington elite throughout his entire life to why he is where he is now and the things that he wants to accomplish. And I think that really resonates when people call him out as a nationalist or a populist or try to use these derogatory terms. It's a individual that many in middle America relate to because they were born in the 80s. They grew up in the 90s. They saw what prosperity in America could be, but they also saw that when the ruling class in Washington, D.C., as he even referenced, make poor decisions, how much it affects the life of people in this country. And I thought that was really powerful. I wanted to play this bite because it's a direct contrast of himself now being the nominee for vice president and the career of Joe Biden. This is bite 6. Let's hear from J.D. Vance.
Joe Biden has been a politician in Washington for longer than I've been alive, 39 years old. Kamala Harris is not much further behind. For half a century, he's been the champion of every major policy initiative to make America weaker and poorer. And in 4 short years, Donald Trump reversed decades of betrayals inflicted by Joe Biden and the rest of the corrupt Washington insiders.
I mean, I think right there, Will, again, we've heard these important statements and important moments from J.D. Vance about, again, the Washington insiders, the difference between the Washington insiders, what they've done to President Trump since he was president, even while he was in office. But you think about even there, though he talked about Joe Biden, of course, being a politician long in Washington, D.C., so a federal elected politician longer than he has been alive. And of course, that distinction being made, that generation, again, there needs to be some balance there. And I think when you balance Donald Trump at his age with J.D. Vance and his age, the balance is done. And of course, it's easy to see that J.D. Vance is someone who is capable of taking on a role as president if they so needed to at any time. And remember, because this is going to be a 4-year presidency without the option of running again if Donald Trump and J.D. Vance do win. And I think if the election were today and Joe Biden was the nominee, they would almost 100%. I don't see any way of them losing that race. But months is a lot of time in politics. And remember, we now know that Nancy Pelosi and more of the top leadership of the Democrat Party, like Chuck Schumer, are calling on Joe Biden to get out of the race. I mean, there are reports, Will, that could happen as early as this weekend, and then everything changes again. The gunshot, the attempted assassination, that changed everything. I think the Hunter Biden laptop and all that being real was important for people to start thinking about, well, who is this Biden family? But if Joe Biden announces that he is not going to be on the ticket, it also raises questions about whether or not he should even be president right now. And I think, again, the Democrats better have everything ready to go for this, or else it leads to complete political chaos.
Well, Jordan, that also brings up the point of this has been the wildest political season maybe in American history when you take into account all the lawfare that we've seen, a failed assassination attempt, a party revolting against the sitting president. I mean, these are, if you had one of these stories in an election cycle, you would say this is a wild election cycle. But instead, it just seems like it never dies down. And as you mentioned, I think The Economist has a forecast that they do 1,000 polls and they run a simulation. And right now they have J.D. Vance and President Trump have a 77% chance of prevailing. Now, that's based off of current knowledge of what's happening today. We're only in July. There are a lot of months before the election where things could change, whether it be a candidate at the top of the ticket or whether it be some sort of October surprise, which I couldn't even fathom what would register in polls at this point of what an October surprise would be, that really it's an unprecedented election. I know that that's a buzzword in Washington and in the media was saying unprecedented, but really, Jordan, you've followed politics, worked in politics for your entire career. Have you seen anything like this?
No, I mean, I think the only one that was like this in any way, I mean, was kind of in the chaos post-election was, of course, President Trump versus Biden. But that was post, really, the election and the votes coming in late and election integrity issues and COVID voting. And, of course, maybe George W. Bush, where you had versus Al Gore and the legal issues there. But those were legal issues. No one had been shot, a candidate. And you didn't have the current president at the time thinking that they may not have it in them, the way they could announce this, to running for a second term. But then the question is, what about all these months in between? Are you going to say, well, it's just too much for me to campaign and run the country, so I'm going to focus on running the country? Or else it's like the cabinet is almost forcing their hand to invoke the 25th Amendment if he doesn't step down, which then puts Harris as president and makes it that much tougher, unless there's deals being made that we don't know about as we speak, to replace her with someone else at the Democrat Party. And also, what happens with all those fundraising dollars, Will? Right now on the FEC laws, it's the Biden, even if they're okay with it, they can't assign all of that over to a new candidate. I think maybe if Harris remains on the ticket, there might be some kind of loophole there. I'm not sure. That it's up to them to figure that out. I'm not going to figure it out for them, make it easier. But as of today, it feels like Joe Biden is not going to be the candidate that Donald Trump is running against, that he'll be running against his policies, but not the man himself.